and welcome to the Giraffe Social Media Podcast. It's what social media managers are talking about. I'm Tyla, and today I'm joined by Creative Manager Chloe and Social Media Manager Laura.
Hi!
Hello!
Coming up on this week's episode, we'll be discussing some of our top summer staycations and holiday inspirations, the difference between content creation and content curation, along with chatting about Instagram's new insight feature, which is allowing you to gain insights as far back as 60 days. Be sure to stick around to the end of the show where we'll be answering some of your burning DMs. So, before we move into things, how are you guys doing? How has your week been? All good?
So far, so good. Can't complain. I know that episodes go out on Thursday, but we record at the beginning of the week, so sometimes it's too soon to tell how good the week is going. But
Definitely. How about you, Laura? How are you?
Yeah, all good, all good. I feel like this week is going really slowly though. I don't know about anyone else. Like sometimes the weeks just fly past, or the days just fly past, and sometimes they just go a bit slower.
I can't lie, I did wake up expecting it to be Thursday for some reason, and it's only Tuesday, so I'm a little confused, but we'll roll with it.
Definitely. And the weather change has definitely had an effect on that as well, I think. The sunshine has decided to leave us, unfortunately, which is very sad.
I think I've just realised it's actually Wednesday. What day is it, guys?
Yeah. It's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday. Oh, see? There you go. I don't even know what day it is.
It's just too much. Well, just to kind of kick off the episode, I thought it would be cool for us to kind of chat about just summer staycations. I mean, obviously with everything opening up and regulations for COVID changing, and you know the Freedom Day that everyone was celebrating last week, I thought it would be cool for us just to chat about, you know, if you guys have any summer staycations planned, if you've kind of got any, you know, holiday inspiration, or even like accounts that you follow on social media that provides you with that inspo to book your next holiday and get out of here as soon as possible. So does anyone have any exciting summer staycations planned?
I actually don't, and I am really envious of people that do. I have no plans to get out of here anytime soon, but I hope that changes. I mean, I could do with a change of scenery.
Totally.
So hopefully maybe by the time sort of mid-August comes, like I'll start thinking about my plans for September, seeing if there's anywhere I'd like to go and anyone to go with, and then might get out of here. I tend to steer clear of social, like holiday inspo social accounts, because it's too much. Like, I don't want to see all these beautiful destinations that I can't go to right now. So
yes, there's like aspirational content, and then there's just like you know, just throwing it in your face. I'm like, I'm all here to be like, yeah, I wish I was there, but it's just too much in 2021. I don't need that kind of it's not negative energy, but it is for me.
Yeah. Completely agree.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I also unfortunately don't have anything planned. I don't know about you guys, but it's so difficult to plan things ahead nowadays with like everything that's gone on with lockdown and COVID and all of the chaos that has been over the last kind of year and a bit. I don't like to plan things in advance, because as well, like I've had holidays planned from like last year that I wasn't able to go on, obviously because they got cancelled. So I'm a bit wary to be booking a summer staycation or even just like a normal holiday out of the UK. Because you never know what can happen.
Yeah, the pandemic gave me two things. It gave me COVID and it gave me commitment issues.
Yeah.
My boyfriend is always trying to get me to plan trips, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not. And he's like, why? I'm like, I don't know, like we could be in lockdown again in a few months' time, like you just don't know. So I actually am going to the Lake District in a few weeks. I wish it was Greece, but you know, I'll take, you know, a little UK staycation for now. So that should be fun.
Definitely, I agree. I mean, it's close enough, Chloe. you know, it's not Greece, but it's somewhere.
It's north, you know, go see the north of the country, that might be nice.
It's a little bit different, definitely. Okay, well, unfortunately, it's sad to hear that none of us have any staycations planned, but it's completely, you know, understandable considering the times that we're living in. Do you guys kind of have anywhere, if you had a dream holiday that you could plan, like is there somewhere specific that you would want to go? You know, is there, I don't know.
Cool.
I mean, my dad got back from the Maldives a couple of weeks ago, and seeing his photos was like, I'd like to go there. I'd really like to go there. It just seems like such. I mean, it's definitely not a holiday where I think you'd come back tired. Like, I feel like it's just ultimate, like, relax, escape from reality. Like, you're literally going to be on an island in the middle of nowhere, and that sounds amazing. So I feel like that would be my dream holiday at the moment. That's all I can think about. I mean, it's not going to happen, but I can dream, and that dream can keep me going for now.
It's worth dreaming about, Laura, for sure.
Definitely.
Chloe, how about you? Any dream holidays on the
I'm not
cards?
sure I've got like a one dream holiday, like this is what I want to do and this is where I want to do it, but I definitely would love to explore kind of like Morocco, maybe like Egypt. I think that's always been on my bucket list of like places to go, a little bit different from your typical like beach holiday or like city escape. So maybe one of those two places, who knows, when we come out of this, that might be first on the list. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I think those would be really, like you said, like interesting places to go to, because I think there's so much culture in each of those places as well, and like there's so much that you can learn and like experiences as well. So I think that's very cool. I think if I had to go anywhere, I'd probably go, I don't know, like maybe Europe somewhere. I've done
very broad.
Europe's big. That wasn't really specific. But I've done like Europe throughout winter, where I did like a road trip across like Europe with my family, which was really cool. And like we went to Brussels and Bruges and Amsterdam and like all of those places over Christmas, and that was amazing. But I think I'd want to experience it in summer, because I feel like a European summer is like, it's warm, but it's a bearable warm. It's not like 40-degree heat where you're sweating and you can't move and like you don't want to do anything. Like I feel like it's a warm summer, and it's a enjoyable summer, so you can still explore and like do stuff. So Europe is where I would go.
Live your very best Harry Styles music video fantasy. Like, I love it.
Definitely, 100%. And Harry Styles would be there as well, ideally. So
yeah. You know, if we're dreaming about things, let's add them to the mix.
Completely. Well, that was just a little kind of icebreaker to get us into this week's episode. So obviously, moving on to our main segment of this week's episode, we of course are going to be discussing the difference between content creation versus content curation. I feel like this topic is quite an interesting one, because I don't know if a lot of kind of creators and businesses necessarily know what the specific differences are. And obviously, you know, being what we do and who we are as social media managers and working within that digital space every single day, I think knowing the difference between, you know, the content that you create and then the content that you curate, it's an important kind of topic to just touch on. And obviously content being like the most integral part of what we do with social media strategy, you know, it is kind of what makes up your strategy at the end of the day. So that will be our main segment for us to discuss today. So jumping right into things, just to kind of define the difference between content creation and content curation. So obviously content creation is created content that we have originally created and distributed by either your specific business or brand. So whether that's a video that you've created, a static image, you know, a graphic, an animation, anything that you as a brand or business has created and put together from your own original content. Just to define kind of the difference between that in terms of content curation. Content curation is basically content that you share from an external source. So whether that's, a news article, a link to an external video that links to something that you're talking about, a blog article that you may necessarily have pulled some form of information or quote from. So that's kind of linking it to different channels and different content that someone else has created. But you are obviously linking your existing content that you have created to that content. Do you guys have any initial thoughts on content creation versus content curation?
Yeah, for sure. I think guess the first thing that comes to mind for people when they think about social media is, of course, content creation. Like, you want to come up with fresh and original ideas, and sometimes maybe people shy away from content curation because they don't want to maybe like shine a spotlight on their competitors. Like, why would I share a blog post that someone else has written when you can write the same thing? But I actually think they're both equally powerful, and content curation, while you're sharing someone else's concepts and ideas, it's a great community builder, and it just kind of shows that maybe you're a team player within the industry, and highlights your openness and willingness to connect with other brands and like join the conversation. That being said, I do think content creation is like probably should be a brand's like main focus, right? What do you guys think?
Definitely.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say like focusing in on content creation being like the main bulk of your strategy, when adding in then just sort of the content curation. So maybe that, again, like 80-20 split that we see quite often in marketing would be adequate for content creation versus content curation.
100%. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you guys. And I think like we mentioned, like a lot of businesses will focus solely on kind of creating their own content and wanting to ensure that they are heavily relying on that. But like you said, that balance is important. So Chloe, do you kind of have any thoughts on in terms of content creation specifically? Any kind of like pros, cons, tips, kind of any advice from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a creative manager, this is kind of like my realm. So there are plenty of pros to content creation. And I think the number one thing is that you've kind of got this like complete control over what you're posting. And then I guess your brand identity, you're in complete charge of what you're putting out there, how you're putting it out there, and what messages and brand voice you want to convey, whether that be through like product imagery that you're taking or like blog posts that you're writing. It all sort of forms together to create this one brand voice. I think when you create content that's shareable, you're really helping build your brand awareness and your brand identity, and kind of demanding recognition in the space, I think, especially when it's like savable and shareable. I know we at Giraffe over on our socials, we share a lot of like social media tips, social media tricks, industry news, like we've got the podcast here. And I think that definitely helps kind of establish ourselves as industry leaders. So that's definitely like a massive pro in building your brand identity as a whole. But I think one of the lesser known pros of content creation is it actually really helps improve your brand's SEO, which for those who aren't aware is search engine optimization. Google actually favors brands that share information first. So if you're one of the companies that are writing their own blog articles, with it could be, information that you've grabbed throughout the industry, but if you've written it in your own article, you're probably likely to rank higher in a Google search when people are coming to search for that information and to look for that. So that's definitely the pros. That being said, though, there definitely are a few takebacks that come with content creation. One of the major ones that we see a lot as an agency, and is one of the reasons that we get, the clients that we do, is because creating content takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it can take a lot of money, which, a lot of small businesses and startups don't always have. They're busy running a business, so maybe the last thing on their mind is creating content for their brand. And this is, you know, even if you're working with an agency like us, it does still take up time and money to, you know, even though you're not creating the content, you still need to look over the schedules and you still need to pay us to create that for you. So there are definitely drawbacks. I think paying for professional software as well is a big investment. And once you've paid for that, it can still take time to learn how to master it. You know, Adobe, Photoshop, and Illustrator are not the easiest of software to become, you know, a master of, but it's important to remember that there is free software out there like Canva, where they offer free versions that work just as well as the paid offerings. They're easy to use, and they have like plenty of templates on there, so it doesn't need to take you a lot of time if you don't want it to. I think finally, the important thing to remember if you're kind of shying away from content curation for the reasons we mentioned just earlier, is that posting created content can come across a little bit salesy, especially if you're purely posting that type of sales content without any educational, informative, or even community content to back that up and to space out the posts that you're creating, which I guess kind of leads nicely, speaking about that kind of content, into content curation, don't you think, Laura?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so similar to created content, curated content has a few pros and a few cons as well. But I think to start off with, curated content is typically quicker and easier to share. So anything like user generated content and sharing links to industry articles are obviously very easy to acquire, but useful and valuable to your audience. And it can also be really cost effective because you can build a catalogue of relevant content to share whenever you're ready to do it. So it's all pretty much evergreen stuff. You can get that in the bank if you ever need to fill some gaps in your content schedule. You can put out some curated content that you've already sort of planned. In addition to this, curated content can also make you aware of your competitors and key players in the industry as you're sort of looking out for any businesses or brands that are posting the type of content that your business or brand is also posting. And it also helps you connect and build relationships with other important companies within your sector. So sort of similar on what Chloe touched on before, is that you then start to build a bit of a community, and you can become a thought leader within your industry, as it helps you build your not only your industry knowledge but also your industry connections. So yeah, I think sort of summarizing that, filling gaps in your content, really great pro. Providing value to your followers, establishing your business as a thought leader, and also building connections. That all being said, of course, with anything, there are always going to be some cons and some downsides, and there are some risks associated with curated content. Most importantly, you need to make sure that you obtain explicit written permission from anyone whose content you wish to repost. So simply crediting the name or tagging them isn't always enough, and you can be subject to legal action for breaching copyright if you were to do that without permission. Only ever posting curated content can also result in a lack of brand identity and thought leadership. So if your whole content schedule is based on purely curated content and no created content, that could give you sort of a lack of control over the exact messaging of your content that you're sharing, which would lead ultimately to a mismatch in your brand's tone of voice and confusing your audience, which could make you lose some of your target audience and make you become a little bit less credible. On the flip side, to created content, curated content can often hurt your search engine optimization, particularly if it's the majority of what you post. So going back to what I said, I would say sort of stick to that 80-20% if you can. Just making sure that the bulk of your strategy is created content, and then adding in any sort of curated content, that additional 20% to make up the overall strategy, I think will be sort of optimal.
I completely agree. I think this is something that a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say forget when it comes to kind of their social media strategy, but that mixture between your own kind of content that you have created and obviously, you know, other content that you pull from outside sources. I think you guys both make amazing, really, really great points of the pros and the cons of using both of those within your strategy, of course. It's quite interesting though as well, I think, because I don't know about you guys, but I've got obviously such a mixture of clients in different industries that we work in, and there's so many of them that are really, really focused on like content creation and creating the content and don't want any sort of like content curation or any sort of external sources or anything included. But then you've got the few that are kind of like, no, like include a mixture. Like it's really, you know, it's good to kind of be involved in the industry and, you know, aware of kind of the news that's working around, what's going on, and like you said, like even integrating with your competitors, like having that relationship with them and building that relationship through curated content and like linking your content that you maybe necessarily created yourself, but having that external factor involved is definitely something that I think builds up, like you said, a brand's like credibility, the trust, that relationship with your customers. It all kind of goes hand in hand. So it is definitely it's an interesting topic, I think, to cover, just because so many people don't always know the difference between, you know, curated content and created content, and B, also just don't necessarily know the importance. So it's definitely an interesting one. Yeah, 100%.
I think it's also really key to sort of find out what works best for your brand and work out the most effective way to post created and curated content to get the right balance for your audience. So if you were to find maybe your audience isn't responding well to curated content, maybe sort of stop posting that as frequently, and vice versa. Just really figuring out what your audience responds well to and working on that and adapting your strategy, sort of trial and testing as well.
Yeah, completely. I completely agree with you. I think also because like you can't have exactly the same strategy for every single brand that you work with. Like obviously you've got to adapt it to like you said, their wants, their needs, what their audience responds to, kind of what works for them as well. So I think like, yeah, using that mixture between created content and curated content is a great way to test that out and to see what works and what doesn't work. So yeah, definitely. Kind of in terms of obviously how you can work them in together, that 80-20 split is obviously something that a lot of brands will focus on, having, you know, 80% of your content being something that you've created and that 20% that you are curating, but also just working those in together and kind of working it and creating a strategy in a way where you can ensure that you're involving both elements within your social media, and you're creating and curating content that is, you know, it's worthwhile and it resonates with your audience, and in doing so kind of, I don't know, building up that relationship, I guess. And at the end of the day, that's what your aim is a lot of the time, is to build that relationship with your customers in order to get them to, you know, interact with your brand, integrate with your brand, purchase your products. Like it's all about building relationships, I think, and having that content will definitely assist in doing so, and that mixture between the two. So yeah, definitely, it's a very interesting topic, like I said before. So this week's question is focused around influencer marketing. So Chloe, listen up, girl. But yeah, so the question reads is, I've recently been researching partnering with influencers in order to get my brand name out there. Do you think that this is a worthwhile move, and why? So Chloe, I feel like this is a really great question, obviously, as our influencer marketing expert, for you to kick off with. So do you have any kind of like initial thoughts and advice to give them?
Totally. My initial advice is yes, like it's worth your time. It's definitely something you should look into, and yeah, it really is like the biggest thing in social media marketing at the moment. I think it's crazy stats, like 80% of marketers are putting budget into influencer marketing at some point during their strategy. I think especially if maybe you're a small business and you're starting out, influencer marketing is kind of like a really great avenue and partnership for you to go down, because you don't necessarily always need a budget to pursue this. So we know like gifted influencer campaigns are not out of the ordinary. We do like to pay our creators for their time, but sometimes you can, you know, come up with a nice partnership that benefits both your brand and the influencer, where you're gifting it as a PR and and they can maybe do like a story unboxing, or they could do a full-blown post for you. It's completely up to them in terms of gifting. But I think the beauty of influencer marketing when it comes to budgeting is there's no one size fits all, and every influencer is going to be different, and every campaign is going to be different. So don't get disheartened if you reach out to one influencer who says your budget's not big enough, or that they don't want to work on a gifting basis, because there are like thousands of influencers out there who, you know, work with different rates, and they might be happy to give you a shout out on their stories completely free of charge. You know, for £100, maybe they are willing to do a feed post for you. It's really like trial and error, as is everything in the social media realm. I would definitely make sure it's something you plan for, though, and you make sure you're reaching out to influencers that are right for your brand, and put a little bit of work into it to get what you want out of it.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like we've said in so many episodes, like influencer marketing is such a big thing in the social media space in the industry at the moment, that it's something that you can definitely tap into. And like you said, Chloe, like you don't need a massive budget behind it for it to be a successful kind of strategy to go with. Laura, do you kind of have any other thoughts on that?
I think Chloe covered that all very nicely. I'm trying to think if there's anything to add. I don't think there is. I think yeah, my advice would be go for it. I don't think there's anything to lose by doing so, because even if you didn't want to run an influencer marketing campaign right now, if you can just start building sort of key influencers that you might want to work with in the future, or that you've got in mind, having that bank of influencers available can be really helpful. And I think that bank of influencers will probably keep growing as well, depending on the type of content that influencer posts. And looking at key statistics like the engagement rate of the influencer is pretty key. Looking at the feed of the influencer, whether that matches your brand or not, and also other things like thinking about the influencer's sort of vision and mission, if you like, and making sure that aligns. I mean, for example, if you're promoting a vegan product, there'd be no point in having an influencer that's not vegan. So just making sure that your influencer is entirely relevant to your brand, you're most likely to get better and more effective quality results from that as well.
I think something else that maybe not a lot of, or something we've maybe not touched on in the podcast before, is if you're thinking about getting into influencer marketing and maybe the budget's not there at the moment, it definitely doesn't hurt to be social, right? If there's some influencers that you would love to work with in the future, but you're not quite there yet, you know, you want to build relationships as early as you can. So start following the influencers that you love, start interacting with their posts, because you never know, the more you interact with them, they may notice you, and then in turn reach out to you privately, and then you can, you know, build partnerships from there. They might discover your brand, love it so much that they do want to engage in a relationship with you. So definitely keep in mind the social aspect of it. I think influencers are definitely more inclined to work with you if they've heard of you before, so kind of cold DMing influencers before, if you haven't followed them, or if you've never liked a post, they might see it as a little bit disingenuous. So definitely start building those relationships as early as you can. I think that's definitely the first step in any influencer marketing campaign.
Definitely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Chloe. I definitely think it's also the whole people buy from people scenario. So, you know, as an influencer, as much as they're doing a job and, you know, they are, you know, selling for brands or promoting brands or sharing their content and building their own brand, you know, it's also just building that trust within that partnership. And I think, like you said, building that relationship with them from the get-go will always be a positive step in the right direction. And you never know, they, like you said, might approach you and want to work with your brand and directly. So
it's all about 100%. The chase.
Definitely. Completely. It's always about the chase. So that was our top DM for this week. Hopefully we answered your burning question. We're able to assist even just a little bit. If you'd like to be featured in next week's episode, then make sure you slide into our DMs over on our Instagram page at giraffesm. Moving on to our next segment of the podcast, it is our Quickfire news feed. So we will now be diving into the top social media news story of this week. which is that Instagram Insights have now extended their tracking period from 30 to 60 days, which is quite interesting. I don't know if you guys have any initial thoughts on that, but from my kind of perspective, I think it's a great move. I'd love if they could increase that date and make it 90 or 120 days. That would be really, really cool. But obviously, you know, from kind of our perspective and with what we do with our clients when it comes to, you know, reporting and gaining insights and learning about their brand, even when we initially kind of start working with them, those Instagram insights are an absolute savior, especially from my perspective. I don't know how you guys kind of feel with regards to that, but I think it's a great move on Instagram's part from a marketing perspective, in a sense that we can now gain so much more information, and like you can see what your insights have been comparing over a longer period of time. I mean, obviously 60 days is only technically 2 months, but a lot can change in 2 months in terms of your strategy and kind of what you're doing and where you're kind of focusing your attention and the audience that you're reaching. So I definitely think, yeah, it's a great move. What are your guys' thoughts? Laura, any initial thoughts?
I have two thoughts about this, and one,
Okay.
this is a classic example, and I think we say this almost every time we talk about Instagram updates, is why wasn't this a thing ages ago? Like, why is that now? Why is this now only just a thing? My second thought, and they're so clever. I mean, the platform is so clever because obviously it's bringing out updates all the time, and it's improving its service essentially, which is great. But also, this should have been a thing a while ago. Not just that, like 60 days to me is, I mean, 30 days was such a minuscule amount of time to get insights from. 60 days is only just a little bit over that minuscule amount. So I think there's still, and this is probably a very strategic move from Instagram, in that, you know, who knows what's going to happen over the next few months, a year, where it might increase even more. I mean, they're not going to jump from 30 days to lifetime of insights, because they have to do it strategically. But I still feel like 60 days isn't enough. I mean, really, you should be able to look back at, you know, insights from since you first started Instagram to now. That would give you the most like valuable data. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's great that the time frame has expanded. Do I think it's enough? No. But fair play to Instagram for once again adding a new update.
Dangling the carrot in front of us, basically.
Yeah.
Giving you a little bit of something, but not too much. Yeah, I agree with you though. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys saw this, but when they made that announcement, they also said that they've introduced like a new calendar tool as well, where you can like go into specific dates and like obviously check like on a certain date. So like if I want to go back, obviously only 60 days maximum, but to a specific date 60 days ago, I can obviously go in and I can see the insights from that, which I don't think was a feature before. So that's interesting. I mean, that's a little bit more positive, maybe, I don't know. Chloe, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I mean, you can never have too much data, right? So yeah, nice one, Insta. They're really on it with the updates this year. We love to see it. Yeah, I think this is great for everyone. It's great for influencers. It's great for social media managers. It's great for brands, you know, in-house teams. I think this is really cool. Obviously, it would be great to have, you know, expansive, you know, insights. But hey, it's Instagram, we cannot ask too much. So yeah, I think you both like hit it on the head. I think this is a great step, and I love what Instagram has been doing for like in terms of insights for creators and for brands recently. I just wish they would kind of speed the process up and get there a little bit quicker. But hey, we cannot complain about improvements, can we?
Definitely not. Definitely not. But I agree. Yeah, it would be great if they could just give us a lifetime of data. Thanks, Instagram. If you're listening, Instagram, let us know.
Yeah, Instagram is one
Because
of
there
our
definitely
top
are.
listeners.
Well, that's kind of all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, or follow us if you're listening on Spotify. We'd love to hear what you thought about today's episodes, so make sure you reach out on our social media and let us know what you thought. We've been Giraffe Social Media. You've been amazing. We'll see you next time.